Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a look under the hood to explore the foundational architecture of the web. Think of the web as this massive, constantly evolving digital city. And, just like any physical city, every single structure you interact with requires a meticulous blueprint, raw materials, and an interior designer to make it functional, accessible, and visually compelling. In this explainer, we're going to dive right into the core mechanics of how all this is accomplished using the foundational languages of the web. And as we walk through these concepts, keep one thought in the back of your mind. Once you have these specific tools in hand, what will you design next?
Let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. First up, building the web skeleton. Then, structuring with semantic elements. Next is mastering the box model. After that, styling, colors, and typography. Then, adding interactive web experiences. And finally, what will you design next? All right, let's jump into section 1, building the web's skeleton, the foundation of the web.
We're starting right at the beginning with the absolute core foundation of every single web page you visit. If you strip away all the flashy animations and the distinct branding from your favorite sites, you're left with this raw underlying structure. So the crucial point here is that HTML provides the raw bones, and CSS is how we decorate those bones to make them visually appealing. Imagine a high-rise construction site, right? HTML is the iron foundation, the concrete pillars, the load-bearing walls. It explicitly tells the browser, hey, this is a paragraph, this is an image, this is a link. But without CSS, that building remains just a frame of gray concrete. CSS swoops in as the interior designer, applying the paint, adjusting the lighting, and really shaping the whole atmosphere.
Now notice how the browser naturally treats different HTML elements. It pushes some of the new lines while letting others sit right next to each other. By default, the web has a physics engine of its own. A block element, like a major heading, is essentially, greedy. It demands the entire horizontal width of the screen, forcing whatever comes next onto a brand new line below it. An inline element, on the other hand, like a clickable text link, is much more space efficient. It only takes up the exact width of its text, allowing other inline elements to sit right beside it on the very same line. Understanding this natural behavior is honestly your first vital step to controlling any layout.
Moving on to section 2, structuring with semantic elements, from chaos to architecture.
Once we have our basic elements, we absolutely need to organize them in a way that makes sense to both developers and the browsers rendering the page. We can't just throw building materials into a pile and call it a house. Modern web design replaces a messy, generic layout with meaningful architecture that clearly describes what each section actually does. Back in the early days of the web, developers used a generic tag called a div for absolutely everything. A div is just an invisible container. So you'd have a div inside another div, and it was a literal nightmare to read and maintain. Today, we use semantic HTML. We explicitly tell the browser, hey, this is the header. This is the nav for navigation, or this is the footer. This matters because it makes your code incredibly clean, and crucially, it allows screen readers for the visually impaired and search engine algorithms to understand your web page perfectly.
So our logical structure is solid, right? But it's completely unstyled, which leads us directly into the mechanics of CSS. We have our semantic blueprint, but now it's time to bring in the design team. That brings us to section 3, mastering the box model, the physics of the web. Before we can paint our elements, we have to understand how they occupy digital space. Every single element on a web page is an invisible box, and understanding these 4 layers from the inside out is the absolute key to layout design. At the very center, you have your content. Wrapping around that is the padding, which is the internal breathing room. Then comes the border, which is the physical wall of the box. And finally, the margin, which is the external personal space that pushes neighboring elements away. Have you ever wondered how UI designers create those modern, airy interfaces that feel so effortless to navigate? Well, it all comes down to manipulating these specific spacing variables. But here is a surprising fact that actually catches a lot of people off guard. Vertical margins overlap instead of stacking. It's a quirk of web physics you absolutely must remember. If you have a top box with a bottom margin of 40 pixels and a bottom box with a top margin of 20 pixels, they do not add up to 60. No way. The browser looks at them, picks the larger number, the 40, and collapses the smaller one right into it. It's a built-in feature to prevent massive unintended gaps in your text paragraphs, but let me tell you, it can definitely be a layout headache if you aren't expecting the math to work that way. Which takes us to section 4, styling, colors, and typography, the interior design.
Now that we understand space, it's time to apply our aesthetics and bring the design to life. This is where the visual identity of a project is really forged. There are over 16 million colors available to you in CSS by using unique hex codes to get the exact background shade you want. You aren't just limited to typing the words red or blue. By using a 6-character hexadecimal code, like #FF0000 for pure red, you can pinpoint the exact pixel-perfect shade to match a brand's identity perfectly. And this matters immensely in the real world. Major companies rely heavily on these precise hex codes to guarantee that their signature colors, like a specific streaming service red or a tech company blue, remain flawlessly uniform across the entire web. To ensure your typography always looks great, CSS uses a brilliant fallback system where you list multiple fonts just in case the user's computer doesn't have your first choice. You see, you can't guarantee that a visitor in another country has your custom typography installed on their machine, so you provide a list. You essentially say, "Browser, please use Open Sans. If you can't find that, try Arial. And if all else fails, just give me whatever default sans serif font you have." It's incredibly smart because it ensures your design never breaks, regardless of the device viewing it. Now, if you've ever wondered how modern buttons get those smooth, rounded edges, or how profile pictures become circles, it's all thanks to the border radius property. By default, every box on the web has sharp 90-degree corners, but by adding just a few pixels of border radius, you instantly soften the design. And the ultimate trick? If your box is a perfect square, setting the border radius to exactly 50% will carve away the corners and leave you with a flawless, perfect circle. These small, precise styling choices are the exact tools you'll use when deciding what aesthetic you're gonna design next. When it comes to putting elements side by side, we have completely abandoned the old, chaotic float method in favor of the incredibly powerful and flexible Flexbox. Anyone who has been in tech long enough remembers the absolute pain of aligning 3 columns using legacy CSS floats. It required complex math for percentages and margins, and it frankly broke if you looked at it wrong. Flexbox completely changed the game. You simply set a container to flex, and suddenly you have properties like justify content, which automatically and mathematically distributes the perfect amount of empty space between your elements. The relief this brought to developers literally cannot be overstated. As a crucial best practice, only force styles with the important flag if you are trapped trying to fix someone else's unchangeable code. In CSS, if you add an exclamation mark and the word important to a style, it overrides everything else. While it's super tempting for a quick fix, it completely ruins the natural cascading logic of your style sheet and makes future updates a total nightmare. Save it only for when you are battling a stubborn third-party plugin that you literally cannot edit.
Let's move into Section 5, adding interactive web experiences, the magic touch. A beautiful website is great, but a responsive, interactive website is what truly engages users. Now we shift from a static layout to a living interface. Forms are how users talk to your website, and choosing the right input type, like knowing when to use a radio button versus a checkbox, is absolutely essential for a good user experience. HTML provides specialized inputs that do a ton of heavy lifting for us. If you use the password type, the browser masks the characters for privacy. If you use the email type, it automatically validates for the @ symbol. And remember this, radio buttons are like choosing your operating system. You can only pick one. Checkboxes are for selecting your hobbies. You can pick as many as you want. Pseudo-classes allow us to dynamically change designs, such as turning a button red only when the user hovers their mouse over it, or highlighting a text box when they click to type. This is really what makes a website feel highly responsive. You aren't just styling static code anymore. You are styling the state of an element. You're creating visual feedback that communicates to the user, hey, I recognize that your mouse is here, and yes, this item is actionable. Even tiny details, like changing the shape of the user's mouse cursor, provide massive visual clues that make your design feel intuitive and alive. By simply using the cursor property in CSS, you can change the standard arrow into a pointer finger for a link, an I-beam for typing, or even a grabbing hand over an image to subconsciously tell the user, hey, you can click and drag this. It's a brilliant psychological tool in modern web design. Finally, Section 6. What will you design next? Your journey begins. We've built the foundation, architected the layout, mastered the spacing, painted the walls, and added interactive magic. We have journeyed through the absolute core mechanics of what makes the web run. You now understand the structural skeleton of HTML and the visual power of CSS. The tools are completely free, the colors are infinite, and the possibilities are practically limitless. The web is a blank canvas waiting for your ideas. So take these tools, start experimenting, and what will you design next? Get out there, write some code, and start building your own corner of the internet. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.